What if a single night could push an entire capital to the brink? As waves of missiles and drones slammed across Ukraine, new reports suggested a critical underground target near Kyiv may have been hit, triggering emergency energy shutdowns and urgent evacuation warnings. President Volodymyr Zelensky called the situation extremely difficult, while NATO sent a powerful signal of military backing. The conflict is entering a far more dangerous phase. Subscribe now for fast, real-time breaking updates. What if the largest air assault of this winter has just rewritten the battlefield in a single night? Ukrainian air defense officials confirmed that Russia launched 71 missiles and more than 450 drones in a massive coordinated strike across multiple regions, marking one of the heaviest attacks of the season. While Ukraine reported intercepting 38 missiles and over 412 UVs, dozens still broke through, striking critical infrastructure and urban targets. Explosions were recorded in Kyiv and several key provinces as energy facilities, transmission networks, and power stations took direct hits. The scale and precision of the assault signaled a clear shift toward crippling Ukraine's ability to function during the harsh winter months. President Volodymyr Zelensky described the strikes as a deliberate campaign against civilian energy systems, warning that the country is facing its most severe power crisis in months. Emergency blackouts were introduced immediately, with backup generators rushed into the hardest-hit districts. At the same time, allies within NATO monitored the escalation closely, calling the attack a dangerous intensification of the conflict. This was not a routine strike, it was a calculated message, and its impact is already reshaping the front lines of the war. What happens when a capital city begins to lose the systems that keep millions alive? As the strikes spread across Ukraine, officials in Kyiv confirmed that the country's energy network had entered its most critical phase this winter. Power generation plants, transmission lines, and distribution hubs were damaged in multiple regions, forcing emergency shutdowns and rolling blackouts across the capital. Government ministers reported that more than 1.1 million residential buildings in Kyiv were left without central heating as temperatures plunged, turning daily life into a race against the cold. Backup generators were rushed to the hardest-hit districts, while utility crews worked around the clock to stabilize what remained of the grid. President Volodymyr Zelensky warned that the attacks were designed to break civilian resilience, not just military capacity, calling the situation extremely difficult for families trapped in freezing apartments. Officials confirmed that daily power cuts now stretch for hours in several neighborhoods, a measure expected to continue throughout the winter season if damage remains severe. This is no longer just a battlefield crisis. It is a humanitarian pressure campaign unfolding block by block across Ukraine's capital. What if one cluster of explosions was not aimed at power plants, but at the very heart of Ukraine's command structure? In the aftermath of the massive overnight barrage, multiple confirmed strike points showed an unusual pattern, dozens of missiles converging on a single location in the Dnipro region. Military analysts noted that such concentration is rarely used for ordinary infrastructure. Ukrainian officials confirmed that this area suffered some of the heaviest impacts of the entire assault, with several high-energy detonations occurring within minutes of each other. While no independent verification has yet confirmed the nature of the target, defense observers emphasized that this level of firepower is typically reserved for hardened underground facilities. According to air defense reports, at least 27 missiles and 31 drones penetrated defensive layers nationwide, with a significant portion falling near this specific zone. The scale of the barrage strongly suggested a strategic objective rather than random saturation. Sources familiar with battlefield tactics explained that reinforced command centers and protected coordination hubs are often buried deep and require repeated direct hits to neutralize. Whether the strike achieved its full intent remains unclear, but the message was unmistakable. This phase of the conflict is no longer focused solely on infrastructure. It is now moving toward high-value strategic targets that could reshape the direction of the war overnight. What if a brief moment of calm was never meant to last? Just days after a short pause in attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, The skies once again filled with missiles and drones in what officials confirmed was one of the largest winter strikes so far. The temporary slowdown, requested through diplomatic channels, had lasted roughly 1 week, offering fragile relief to cities struggling to keep power and heat running. U.S. President Donald Trump publicly described the pause as a humanitarian step during extreme winter conditions, noting that even a few days without strikes could help civilians survive freezing temperatures. But that window closed abruptly. Within hours of the truce's expiration, Russian forces launched over 70 missiles and more than 450 drones across Ukraine, directly targeting energy facilities once again, a clear signal that the restraint phase was over. Ukrainian officials said the renewed barrage caused some of the worst grid damage seen in weeks. President Volodymyr Zelensky criticized the short-lived halt as insufficient, warning that limited pauses only delay, not prevent, large-scale assaults. What followed proved his point. The return to full-force strikes marked a sharp escalation, showing that diplomacy's brief breathing space had collapsed, and the conflict had shifted back into relentless high-intensity warfare. What if the next phase of this war is no longer fought by Ukraine alone? As explosions still echoed across the country, NATO delivered one of its strongest signals yet by sending its Secretary General directly to Kyiv, standing side by side with Ukrainian leadership at the height of the crisis. During the visit, Western allies confirmed that billions of dollars in military and security assistance continue to flow toward Ukraine, with emergency packages focused on air defense, energy protection, and battlefield readiness. Officials stressed that once any peace agreement is reached, Ukraine would not be left exposed, but backed by immediate military guarantees from partner nations. President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomed the message as vital for national survival, stating that real security comes not from documents, but from strength on the ground and in the skies. At the same time, Moscow issued sharp warnings that any foreign troops deployed to Ukraine would be viewed as legitimate military targets, a statement that instantly raised fears of broader confrontation. What began as a regional conflict is now brushing dangerously close to a wider geopolitical showdown. With NATO moving closer and Russia drawing harder lines, the battlefield is no longer just about territory. It's about the balance of global power itself. What if the war in Ukraine is now pushing the world toward its most dangerous security moment in decades? Russian officials warned that the global balance is entering a far riskier phase as the last major nuclear arms control framework between Moscow and Washington approaches collapse. Without binding limits, both sides could soon face a future with no restrictions on strategic weapons for the first time in more than 50 years. President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly argued that the security environment has fundamentally changed since the conflict intensified, while Moscow signaled it is preparing for a world without formal nuclear constraints. On the U.S. side, President Donald Trump has floated replacing the existing framework with a broader deal that could include other major powers, a proposal that has so far gained little traction. Former President Barack Obama, who signed the original agreement in 2011, warned that letting it expire would erase decades of diplomacy and sharply increase the risk of a new arms race. With missiles already flying over Ukraine, analysts say the erosion of global safeguards now adds a chilling second front to the conflict, one that could reshape international security for generations. As Ukraine faces freezing darkness, relentless airstrikes, and rising global tensions, the conflict is rapidly entering a far more dangerous chapter, one that could reshape security far beyond Europe. Will diplomacy regain control, or is the world drifting toward a wider confrontation? What do you think happens next? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe for breaking updates, and stay informed with us. Thanks for watching. See you in the next report.